Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined Team Gallifrey as they travel the Vortex and arrive at episode 547. And I believe Ace had a phrase for times like this. Bring it on. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How's it going, guys?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Not too bad.
Did you guys do anything, watch anything this week? All right, well, let's move on. I
was going to let Sean go first.
Sean, you didn't watch anything?
Yeah,
if you had to think about it. Go ahead, Keith. If you have to think about it, it wasn't worthwhile.
We watched Confess Fletch.
Oh, how was that?
That's what our Friday night movie was. It was really good. It's very much a throwback to, old school comedies. Kind of. It's not the blockbuster. It's not something that. It's unfortunate because it's not the type of movie that's going to get made for very much longer. I don't feel like.
Yeah.
In today's Hollywood. I recently refamiliarized myself with the original Fletch and had kind of decided that I don't know that I'd ever actually seen it all the way through. And it's okay. I mean, I know there's a couple of gags that stand out that are very quotable, and Chevy's funny, but for the most part, it's just kind of there. I remember going to see Fletch Lives in the theater. Wow, is that one not aged well? For a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
But this is consistently the funniest and the best, even though it's the most grounded, I think, of the Fletch character. Supposedly it's much, much, much more in line with the books. But John Hamm was phenomenal. And it's just, I hope we get 30 more of these. I would line up and go see them in theaters. It was that good. But I just kind of get the feeling that, it feels like a movie whose time has passed, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We finished Picard Season 2, which was okay. It had some cool ideas in it and some fun stuff, but overall, it got a little long in the tooth, I thought. A little too much of a slog to try to get through it. And now we are about halfway, 6 episodes into Season 3, and the turnaround this show has done is pretty incredible. The first couple of episodes, I was like, okay, yeah, it feels a bit more like more of the same, but then it just starts, the more the story unveils itself and goes along, it gets better and better as it goes.
Just picks up steam, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
I didn't watch, I don't think I've watched anything since last week. Nothing with any relevance. I guess I did watch another episode of Mandalorian, but I'm still not finished yet. I think I've got 2 more episodes left, maybe.
Hi, I'm Rupert Booth.
I am known as Paul Ferry.
And my name is Barry Williams.
Together, we host Time Ram.
Time Ram's a cruel mistress.
It's a random number generator.
That also.
We roll a number from 1 to 30, and that's our doctor. Then 1 to 300 for the story, and then we ram them together.
Even if it doesn't make sense.
Cruel, I tell you.
Time Ram, putting the wrong doctors in the wrong stories, so you don't have to.
You're listening to Traveling the Vortex.
All right, well, I guess there was one other thing that I did. I went ahead and picked up all 4 issues of Paradise Towers, Paradise Found. This is the 4-issue series from Cutaway Comics. And the reason why, although this is probably our reason for us to do these Cutaway Comics versions of things, is the first issue came out in November of 2021, and the most recent issue just came out last week. So
Wow.
They've been few and far between. I think part of it has to be because they've been doing some, what's the Kickstarter campaigns in order to get some of these published. So I think that has to do. I'm sorry. The first one was August of 2021. And then I think one came out in November, and then I think one came out last year, and then the fourth one just came out. But yeah, so just a little primer before I start my timer. Paradise Towers, this is the continuation, or this is a sequel to the Paradise Towers Sylvester McCoy 7th Doctor story. It takes place 15 years later. A little background, Cutaway Comics have been doing spin-offs of the Doctor Who, the world of Doctor Who for a few years now. I think their first series was Lytton, which was based on the character from Remembrance of the Daleks. No, not Remembrance. Resurrection of the Daleks. And then again in Attack of the Cybermen. And there was a 4-issue arc of that. They've done Omega. In fact, they have a audio where Brian Blessed is an audio drama that they've produced that Brian Blessed is playing Omega in it. And then
Wow.
they've done in fact
Add on the schedule.
so yeah, some of the interludes.
Excuse me while I do my Brian Blessed impersonation.
Some of the interludes in the books here have also been they've got I think they're called backups is what they're called, and they're usually little 2-page stories that they've been doing in this Paradise Towers, which are Happiness Patrol. So those have been kind of interesting as well. But they've been doing some of these spinoffs for a few years now, and what they do is they get with the artists that are the creators of this. And of course, this one was, and I'm going to forget his name. I know he's going to do that. Is it Stephen Wright? No, Stephen Wyatt. Yeah, Stephen Wyatt is the one that wrote this one. Wrote this, and so they got the approval to continue on with this. And this is actually Sean Mason is writing this, and then some of the art's been done by Silvano Beltramo. Silvano Beltramo, I believe is the name. Has done some of the artwork on these. But anyway, so let me start my timer here, and I'll give you my something new 2-minute review. Okay, so Build High for Happiness, Cutaway titles sequel to the 24-season Doctor Who Paradise Adventures. So the issue kind of picks up 15 years after the events of Paradise Towers. And it starts out by explaining that Pex and 2 travelers essentially set things right for Paradise Towers. But there's one gal, and her name's Viv 2, real original, and she's the daughter of 2 of the original Kangs. And so she she feels like something's out of sorts, and everything's great. Paradise is wonderful. You know, they've got everything they need, everything they want. They still got the Rezzies, they still got the Kangs, and they still have the caretakers. And there's still these groups, but, you know, it's just not like it was before. But basically what has happened as the leader of this faction has come in and really kind of promised everything to be good, but Viv kind of feels like something's wrong. And she ends up, Pex is dead, but she ends up finding somebody who looks like or claims to be Pex. And so she follows him. And without giving too much away, it's not actually Pex, but it's somebody from the past, and they are trying to regain control of Paradise Towers. In the meantime, the overseer of the new Paradise Towers isn't quite what she seems as well, and so there is a bit of a Matrix sort of thing happens in the middle of this, and Viv gets wrapped up in it, and it's up to her to bring everybody the truth of what's really happening in Paradise Towers. It is a really good series. I really, really enjoyed it, and highly recommend it for anybody, especially. That's one of those things about Happiness Patrol. It's one of those, when I first saw it, I didn't care for it that much, and I didn't appreciate it until years later when I understood the undertones. And so those sort of undertones of the story are also still in this, carry through to this, and I think that's what makes this such a good story. So that is my Something New 2-minute review.
Yeah, sounds pretty good.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, And every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Allison Fitz-Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
All right, well, let's move on to news.
A new teaser dropped rather unexpectedly, only once. Last night on the BBC. It was like a whole, 10-second clip.
Was it last night or was it? I think it was Sunday night. Oh, no, yeah, last night was Sunday night. Never mind.
We do occasionally record on time.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So what do you guys think?
Not much to get from the teaser, but
There's
I am
really
glad
not.
that there is some marketing actually happening for the show again.
Yeah.
I'm
Fortunately,
genuinely kind of excited over the less is more idea.
We're getting something but nothing at the same time, which is exciting. Yeah.
Normally I would complain about that, but I feel like Hollywood spoils me so badly on films anymore that by the time they've released the teaser, the trailer, the second trailer, and the final trailer, I've seen the movie and I don't need to watch. I feel like this is like, cool, who's back? That's kind of all I needed.
Well, I've always appreciated this sort of marketing technique that gets you excited and interested in it without giving a lot away. It feels like a real viral campaign of, I can't remember what the phrase is used for this sort of marketing, but I've always appreciated this sort of thing where it's kind of cryptic and you have to try to decipher some things in order to try to figure out maybe what's going on in the trailer and still not really picking out anything. So
yeah,
I think that's the nice thing about this particular one is, like you guys said, it kind of continues to generate the excitement for it. But I mean, we did get 2 relatively significant trailers very, very early on. And so, which I felt gave a lot of stuff. I don't think it ruined anything. I don't think it gave away anything, but that they were packed with a lot of visuals. And so I kind of like that they've sort of pulled back a little bit and they're giving us these little tiny snippets now leading up to the big day, so that we don't feel like we're oversaturated with, the previews coming at us. And as Sean said, I'm with him. Hollywood has completely spoiled me on the way that they preview or trailer movies now. And I really get frustrated that they give a little too much away. And I don't even think the 2 trailers that we got for this anniversary special series was even too much. But I'm with you guys. I kind of like having those nice little doses of, hey, keep the excitement going, because we're still 4 months out from November, 5 months out from November. So.
Do you collect Doctor Who? Do you have Doctor Who items and you don't know you collect Doctor Who? For all things in the Doctor Who collecting world, tune in to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, a Direction Point Network podcast. I am Larry Van Rosbergen, your host, and I have been collecting Doctor Who for 40 years. With popular features like collection protection and the most outrageous offer, we have a lot of fun. Available anywhere you get your podcasts. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point Network podcast.
All right, well, let's move on to our review. And of course, we're dipping back into the Time War. And this time we are reviewing Gallifrey Time War 3. We rejoin Narvin, Leela. Yes. We rejoin Narvin, Romana, and then eventually Leela for more adventures during the Time War.
From Big Finish Productions.
This is it. The end of the line. In orbit of a dying star, on the fringes of a dying galaxy.
Gallifrey, Time War 3.
Hands where I can see them.
Who are you?
I'll ask the questions.
I'm Narvin.
And I'm Romana.
Of course you are.
The ghosts. Hungry, vicious. You've been to the place where they are. You reek of it.
The longer we stay, the worse we make things. We have no choice but to leave.
Like Leela did?
Exactly. She was here, and she'd have understood what was necessary. She did understand.
We don't both need to die! Oh, don't be an idiot!
Listen to me. Climb up now.
Trauma is heir to the throne!
Do as I say. I am your mother. You will do as I say.
Alert! Identification confirmed!
You know these guys?
The female is a president of Gallifrey, an associate of the Doctor. She has encountered us many times.
I kind of guessed they were VIP.
Big Finish. We love stories.
Is this what life is going to be from now on? Nowhere to rest? Just constant running?
Hostiles. Exiled from Gallifrey, Romana and Narvin are fleeing from their own people in the Time War. Seeking refuge on a derelict wreck, they find they are not alone, and that the Time Lords have enemies everywhere.
Bum, bum, bum.
Go ahead, Sean.
It's a pretty standard story from the standpoint that it's alien, essentially. I mean, we're trapped on a spaceship, and there's a thing out there trying to get us. And there's a lot of crawling through ducts and elevator shafts and whatnot to get from point A to point B and then back to point A. But I found that I liked this one. Maybe it's just because I liked this particular style of Who. It kind of sort of gave up a base under siege vibe, which, as we know, is my jam. But it was fun to have both Romana and Narvin out in the field, outside of Gallifrey, outside of the political fights, all those things that I was very much excited about Gallifrey to begin with. And then I feel like we jumped into the Gallifrey story is far too late in the run for me to get that because we're dealing with the war. So I didn't get as much of the political infighting.
Because we're
kind of
10 box sets in, and
right.
the first 8 had all that.
Yeah. Totally my fault on scheduling. I get it. But it was fun to take them out of what I perceived was going to be the Gallifrey environment and put them, out here on the run and throw some problems their way. I thought the mystery was relatively clever. Although maybe a tad bit predictable when you talk about, an unexploded time grenade. Sometimes I love the sheer lack of technobabble that Doctor Who presents us with. What is it? It's a time grenade. Oh, okay. Sure. You didn't come up with a cool name for it. It's a time grenade. Extrapolate on your own thoughts. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes it tickles me when that happens.
It's sort of, for me, I think it's almost like lazy writing, but I'm getting used to it because it seems like in a lot of this, even these Time War audios, not just the Gallifrey ones, but we've had a lot of times where they've just called something what it is, instead of coming up with something clever. And I'm almost getting tired of it because I think it's lazy writing. But on the flip side, it's also giving you, it's just obvious. I mean, it's an easy way to tell you this is what it is once you extrapolate what it does, it makes sense. Well, it's a time grenade. Okay.
Well, and it's both an audio thing to make it easy since you can't develop a prop for it.
Right.
It's an easy jump there. But it's very much a Doctor Who thing. This is something that the show has done. Now, the interesting side note is Star Trek Discovery did this in their first season with something called a time crystal. And I lost my mind because over there it is lazy writing. Because Star Trek is known for its technobabble. And gosh darn it, you come up with a weird name for whatever that's supposed to be. You can't just call it a time crystal. It's like calling those, dilithium crystals. You wouldn't call them speed crystals. I mean, it's that level of dumb. But in Doctor Who, it's acceptable because it's a different vibe. But anyway,
it's also an inconsistent vibe because we've gotten other elaborate names for things before.
Oh yeah, very much so. But again, if you're in the Who fandom looking for canon or consistency, or
that's true.
No, you're in the wrong fandom, pal. We don't do that here. Although I did have a thought, and if the long gestating traveling the vortex role playing gang ever gets off the ground officially, wow, I came up with an idea to completely fix and justify all of the sinkings of Atlantis. Is it sad that I'm kind of excited about that? Like, I really want to play that story just to get it out in the wild.
Keith, what do you think?
I agree with what Sean said. I enjoyed the story. I thought it was a nice kind of change of pace. It was Time War related, but not in the thick of it like we've been with the War Doctor. I liked having Romana and Narvin together out in the field because previous story box sets we seem to be splitting them up, so it's nice to see that dynamic together. The overall plot, I thought it was an interesting exploration of an attempt at a weapon that goes wrong, and it's kind of a bit predictable, but it was still it was enough of an enjoyable ride that I was okay with all of that.
I think I'd echo everything you guys are saying about it. I liked it. I think the frustrating thing about me, well, first of all, this entire box set almost has nothing to do with the Time War. I mean, Romana and Narvin have been exiled, and so they're on the path to find Leela. And until the very, very end of this, there's really nothing. I mean, they keep warning people that they come across that the Time War is coming, and I think in this particular episode, where they're at is because or ramifications from the Time War. But I think the thing that annoyed me the most about this one was, and I think good writers can get around this. They can still use this device, but get around it. They can write very well. But this one was such the nature they had this main gal, and I, for the life of me, can't remember her name right now, but she's continuing to... Tralick, I think was her name, yeah? Tralick.
Yeah.
All right, so Tralick keeps going around being super suspicious and withholding a lot of information and not telling them things that she had disclosed things to them early on in the story, obviously we wouldn't have had a story, but they wouldn't have led to all these unfortunate events that we come to. But what makes it even more frustrating is later on in the story, she says that phrase that I absolutely hate when writers use this. You mean you haven't figured this out by now? That is so stupid. That's the stupidest line ever, because if you're not giving enough information to let people in on what's happening, you can't later ask them if they have figured it out unless there is some reason you can't tell them. And there is absolutely no reason in this story that she couldn't have told them what was going on. And so I think that it lends to the mystery of what's happening here. And the writer wants to keep you in the dark, but I think there could have been better ways of doing that without making it seem so obvious that she was withholding information and then later makes that comment. That was my only nitpick about this story, but overall I enjoyed it. I'm like you guys, it's kind of a run-of-the-mill story, but I kind of like the surprise at the end that this is, she's actually can't escape from here, because if she does, then she dies. And this thing that perceivably is keeping her there is really doing it for her own good and not for, not to being malicious or, malice. I think had the thing been able to get out, it would have been dangerous. I'm not saying it wasn't, but ultimately it was really trying to keep her alive or keep her around. She's pretty much dead, but keeping her in this stasis. Will she move on to the next one?
My computer will pull up the tab. There we go. Nevermore. Narvin and Romana reach a distant rural world. But even here, the Time War follows, and there are more things to fear in the Vortex than warships and weapons. The Oraviks have caught a scent, and they are hunting.
See, this one gets a dun-dun-dun for me because I liked this one. I liked that this one kind of unravels as it goes along. I did not realize that the crazy woman in the corner, was actually the main gal years later. And so I really like the fact that they're having to discover this as they go along, that they're trapped in this loop that's just outside of the reality of things or just outside of time working itself, having to work it out as they went along. Romana having to figure out what's kind of going on here. Just the echoes that we get at the beginning kind of paying off as we come back towards the end and wrap back around to this, I thought was a really good payoff. And I thought it was really well written, and it sort of feels like something that's been done before, but it's done differently enough that it feels fresh and new, and I liked that about it as well.
It's got a very nice, creepy atmosphere to it, even though there really is no reason for it to be creepy. Especially once they kind of get in the woods and, something's chasing them. And they of course, later realize it's the Oraviks. But I like that aspect of it. And I agree. I think the time loop, although it feels more like a time echo sort of situation, yeah. I like. I feel like Narvin, between this story and last story, is written a little inconsistently. I feel like he should have been keeping up with Romana and knowing what she was realizing at the same time as him, instead of being befuddled and not understanding what was going on most of the time. Where in the last one, he was on top of it and, understood kind of what was happening and didn't trust the lady. This one, he just seems to be befuddled the whole time and doesn't know what's going on. So that frustrated me a little bit, that he's not written a little bit more consistently.
I can see that.
Yeah, especially coming off of the last one where, Narvin admits to having a fear of heights. And at first it feels like it comes out of nowhere until he explains, well, no, after that business on the roof and, recalling the previous adventure where he was chasing down the futuristic time agent. And Romana goes, oh, and a side note, because I forgot to mention it, that scene when they have to swing through the breach and it goes deadly silent except for the heartbeat and the breathing and the kind of the internal monologue. Mm-hmm. Chef's kiss. That was fantastic with how that was done. But to see that kind of continuing development for Narvin in that one, and then get to this one and almost have him back into his administrator role where he's always a step behind and trying to be supportive but not really there. Yeah, I can kind of agree with that.
And I can kind of rationalize it in my head. I shouldn't have to, but I kind of can, in the fact that, well, okay, he's a spy, he's a CIA, so the interpersonal skills and the reading people he does really well, but he doesn't know the technology stuff very well, and the temporal theoretics he doesn't quite have as good of a grasp on as Romana, but that's still kind of stretching to make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know. Maybe he didn't go to the academy. We know Romana did, so.
Well, maybe that wasn't his strong. And who knows how much of that stuff Romana picked up because she was traveling with the Doctor so much.
Oh, yeah, that's true, too.
And how much of it was from the academy. I mean,
yeah, once you have traveled with the Doctor, I kind of feel like that anybody you get paired with pales in comparison a little bit. Because it's well, I'm book smart. Yeah, but.
And Romana, and, Romana's now the Doctor in this sort of situation, so she is going to be the smarter one and always know what's going on more so than anybody else she's with. So I understand why they do it for the writing aspect, but sure.
I mean, Narvin is very much the companion.
Yeah.
for Romana's quote unquote doctor.
Although I really feel like that he sort of has the lead in the first story. I mean, it seems pretty equal, but I think he's sort of edged forward as the lead in that one, and because of everything that he says about that, and then in this one, I think he's kind of pushed back, and Romana becomes the lead character for this one, and I agree that I think that's what lends to that consistency is because you've kind of almost put him too far to the back burner.
Yeah, and a lot of it's just needs of the story. Again, looking at the first one and how it's really fun how much shades there are of the Doctor and a companion when they get to the supplies, and Narvin's like, "Oh, look, we've got time grenades, we've got this, we've got a staser," and he starts packing everything up. She's like, "Really, you're bringing the gun?" And it's like, "Oh, what a Doctor thing to say." But in this instance, yes, I totally side with Narvin. Bring the gun.
Well, yeah. Well, and it's I think I complained once before about I felt like Narvin should have known better and been more on top of whatever situation he was in. I think that comes in the fact of this is, even though we haven't listened to them all, this is volume 10, 11 of this series, and Narvin's been throughout the whole thing. So I felt like it just sometimes feels like he's not had enough growth, and I've not even listened to everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can see that.
Well, let's move on to... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I do agree about the atmosphere. The scene when they got up to the green wall in particular, man, that was just straight up Blair Witch. Just get out now, go away. That's creepy.
Well, let's move on to Mother Tongue.
Leela was thrown into a vortex ravaged by the Time War, lost in space and time, but the Trill have shown her mercy. She finds herself in another realm, another life, where the warrior is also a mother, where she must help her son to choose the path to avoid his world's destruction.
I give this one high praise. I think this one.
Well, you lead us off then.
I'll tell you, this one I liked a lot, and I liked it because of the way that it's structured and the way that the story's told. It does, to its detriment, seem to be a little bit rushed because I think that they had to quickly get Leela very much invested in the story, and for as short as the story itself is, even though it's an hour long. It really kind of feels like the character is driven to move along and have more investment in this life than maybe it sells it. But I really like this idea of Leela getting these different glimpses into another world, another realm, where she, in all intents and purposes, is Leela, and they never give you the impression that she is somebody different, that she's like quantum leaped into somebody's body. You get the impression that this is her from a different time or place, but she still has her, the Leela that we know from our world. She still has those, wherewithal and factors in still with her. So, but I really like how it's structured in the fact that she's kind of traveling through this timeline, and it draws us forward and backwards as we unravel what's happening here. And when it's
alternate versions,
yeah, exactly. And then when it's kind of revealed that the warrior, whatever his name, it doesn't say here. Anyway, the head guy, the leader or the royal or whatever he is actually her son, and that the kid that was supposed to be that flip-flop, that Prince and the Pauper kind of switcheroo, I thought that was cool. I mean, I love that revelation. I didn't suspect that. I had no idea that's where they were going with this. And then ultimately her having to go back and get a second chance at that event and make that sacrifice of letting her son make his own choice and not push him into the choice that she feels that he needs to make. I really liked that. I thought that was a really kind of a cool dynamic.
I liked all those things that you mentioned also. And Leela's emotional journey throughout the story is phenomenal. And I think overall the story is good and a very interesting storytelling. It does feel a little inconsistent, and I felt I had trouble kind of wrapping my brain around how and what was going on because of Leela's. I didn't get the impression that Leela was in somebody else's body. That was actually Leela. Yet Renucha, the teacher, then somebody else does jump into her body.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to be inconsistent on how that mechanic seems to work. So that was where I kind of started to struggle with, well, how come this is Leela's body but not Renucha's Lady Zeno instead of Renucha, but a different timeline? I struggled with that aspect of it. But the rest of it I thought was interesting and good. And the idea of the trill, this plant that's sentient essentially and can, keep the planet concealed from time, I think is a really cool idea. And Gallifrey wanting to weaponize it, I like that aspect of it too, because that makes sense and that fits into the Time War aspect of things.
I have a feeling that they don't explain it well enough, but what I had kind of presumed was because the Trill allow for these quote unquote visitors, the Time Lords have figured out how to tap into that and place Madame Xena in Renucha's body. And so I think they're manipulating things in order to do that. But I think that's the idea of that whole setup with the lady in the garden when she realizes that Leela is, one of these, what is she called, visitors or travelers or whatever they call them?
Yeah, visitors.
Yeah. And so I think that setup was to let us know that that's kind of a thing that the Trells provide for. But what I think I agree with you is I don't think that the story goes far enough to explain how the Time Lords are able to utilize that to get inside.
Considering Leela's not even a Time Lord, how, is it a Time Lord thing? Is it just
no.
Anybody can become a visitor?
I think
it's just not very clear.
I agree, but I think that... I agree. I don't think it's a Time Lord thing, though, because of the conversation that the one gal, is it Dra, has with her in the garden when she's explaining to her that from time to time this happens. And so I got the impression that the Trell just sort of picks people and that they don't have to be Time Lords. They don't have to be anything else. So
I don't know if it's because I've been reading a couple of High Republic books, but this feels more like a Star Wars story to me than a Doctor Who universe story.
Really?
If the Trill feels like it should be a Force related, thing instead of a Vortex related thing.
Yeah.
I can buy that.
Yeah,
there were moments of this that I liked. I liked, well, first of all, finding out Leela's alive.
Yeah.
Yay. Good thing.
Always pleasant. Yeah.
Being thrown into this very dramatic memory of her mother to start things off, and then finding out that she herself was a mother, apparently. Okay, this could be cool. Unfortunately, I feel like it just gave off this vibe of being a timey-wimey loop kind of story that just wasn't told very well, with the back and forth to fill in the blanks of, what parts of the story are we going to miss out on? Okay, well, obviously the most important one is going to be the one we get right before the end in order to set up the climax. And then, honestly, I got frequently confused between what were their names? Shellen and Cromer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not only because they physically change roles where one becomes the one that we didn't think is actually the Lord Warrior, Lord High Warrior, whatever his title is.
I don't know why I can't remember what he is.
And then the other one becomes the gardener after the accident. But just they seemed, I don't know, it almost seemed interchangeable throughout the story when it was, oh, sorry, Leela, I mean, Mom. It's like, well, make up your mind. Would you? That's the inconsistency. It's really, I as far as I could tell, there wasn't a reason for it.
I got the impression that Leela was making him call her Leela. The Leela that we don't see, the Leela that we're not privy to because we're only getting it through our Leela's eyes. I get the impression that it was his mother, Leela, was forcing him not to use her as mother because this Leela is still a warrior and she's trying to detach her son from reliance on her. And so I kind of got the impression that's why she was having him call her Leela instead of Mom. But he's kind of this pacifist and this, he's more caring and not warrior-like. He's the gardener. And so he defaults to Mom first. And then, of course, remembers, oh, I'm not supposed to call you Mom. I'm supposed to call you Leela. So that was what I gathered from it. Maybe I just completely grasped that from nowhere. But
there was a drop line about, oh yeah, I'm supposed to call you Leela instead of Mom.
Yeah.
So you didn't grasp that out of nowhere.
Okay.
They laid that groundwork.
And it was Lord Warrior. You did have it right, Sean.
Lord Warrior.
Yeah.
But then as to the quantum leaping of it, if you will, I think that, at least to me, felt very planned from Leela's conversation with. Was it Draw?
Mm-hmm.
When they're talking and she first says, "Oh well, you're a traveler then, or you're a visitor," whatever the terminology was. She grasps that this is not an unusual chain of events. It's not like you're a crazy person, which is actually kind of refreshing because so many stories, I'm not me, I'm somebody else. Oh well, let's lock them up.
Right.
It's kind of nice to have a default built into the, oh yeah, that's a thing that happens every now and then. Because then later we do get it with Renuccia when she kind of almost physically transforms in the classroom. You can hear her voice and he's totally doing this. And then the minute later is totally confused as to what's going on. And it becomes very obvious that somebody else has dropped in on her.
Yeah.
So I kind of assumed that it was the same with Leela, that she is inhabiting somebody else, whether consciousness or whatever, but she still sees herself as Leela.
Yeah, that's just I
it's
agree.
The fact that her name has always been Leela on this planet is what makes it confusing.
Yeah, right.
I think so.
Exactly.
But
she just got the luck of the draw of ending up in somebody also called Leela.
I did think Sarah Douglas was fairly awesome. It was great to hear her as Drawl.
She's not in it much, but
she's not in it much. But any excuse for more Sarah Douglas in my life, I'm all right with. But yeah, it just kind of became a.
I really like the quantum leaping aspect of it, of them going back and forth and realizing what she has to do to change things and seeing the ramifications of all that. All that stuff was really cool.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's move on to the next one.
Unity. On a dusty frontier world, destiny awaits Romana. Betrayal, deception, and death are the currency on Unity. And as the Daleks close in on their target, there will be a price to pay.
I'm going to give a bum for the first 40-some-odd minutes of it that I've listened to, because I didn't get a chance to finish it before we started this review. I was really digging it.
I'm going to give it the golden raspberry because it was pointless and had no point being in this other than the fact that we have reunited with Leela. That's all that's good about this.
only to have them be ripped away from each other at the end.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, here's the stupid thing about this is Leela has just left this last place where the trails are. She's now somehow gotten to Unity, and
no connection
whatsoever.
No mention.
She's shacked up with this lady and her son, helping them, which is great. It's very much Leela. She's protecting her. She's the warrior. She's helping them out on this planet where, husbands either killed or taken off by slavers or killed by the slavers. And then you've, of course, got this stereotypical American accented slaver guy that's the head of this guy, head of this group, that's hijacked the TARDIS, and they're the Ravagers that come and raid the different farms, and fortunately Leela has everything protected, and Narvin and Romana show up, and they find her, and really quick at the very top, and we learn about everything that Leela's been doing here, and then Leela decides begrudgingly to go help them find their TARDIS so that they can get off world, and they find their TARDIS to find out that the Daleks are there, and then they go back, and the Daleks take over the planet anyway. So, I mean, it's all completely futile. There's absolutely nothing of value in this story for this entire connection to the Time War or the connection to the Gallifrey series. And it really feels like a glorified way to have a cliffhanger of, what happened to Romana? Did she really die? That was frustrating as heck. Also, it's inconsistent because she's like, okay, I've got to stay here, and they're looking for me because I'm marked, because they knew who I am. So I'm going to use the chameleon arch in order to become somebody else, and then I won't remember. And then so it sounds like she's convinced she's going to do that. She steps out the door and then goes, well, that's the coward's way. I can't do that. And then has to pretend that she's done it so that they can convince Leela to leave her behind. I'm sorry. It was just not good. It was not good at all.
Okay.
Convince me why it was good.
What'd you like about it, Sean? Other than of what you heard.
Of what I heard, I 100% agree that it does not connect thematically to what has come before in this box set. As a standalone adventure, at least so far, it was kind of. I enjoyed the seeing of the bonds being broken between these three, because with the little bit of Gallifrey that we've gotten, I kind of feel like we've gone through cycles with Romana and Leela, where they are friends and then not. And then they're kind of uneasy allies. And then maybe we actually do get to the point where we're friends. And then because of the demands of her job, Romana does something that's kind of crappy. And Leela, oh, I see you Time Lords are all the same kind of stuff. And when she disappeared, we got what I felt was some genuine concern from the Time Lords that we have to go find Leela. Now, it took a couple of box sets before we actually went to go find Leela, but I was looking forward to the reunion. But in the meantime, Leela has moved back into the I don't think I trust you, I'm not sure I like you phase of the relationship. And so I felt like this had a lot of very rich character drama kind of going on between them as they were struggling to figure out, where are we at? What side of the relationship are we on at this point? And how do we move forward? And should you trust me? And things of that nature.
Did you mean a couple of episodes, or did you really mean box sets? Because Leela was dispatched in the last box set, wasn't she? I thought it was Time War 2 that she and the Master goes off and.
Yeah, she and the Master go off in the second one. But what I mean is,
you meant a few episodes then.
Well, I meant for. In my mind's eye, I feel like Leela's. I mean, she's obviously been on Gallifrey since Invasion of Time. So she's gotten to know these people. And to outsiders, she will stand up and say, no, the Time Lords are the good guys.
Oh, no, I followed you there. You said she was gone for a couple of box sets.
Well,
and I was like, I don't think she really was.
It was volume 1.
Oh, was it volume 1? Okay.
Yeah, it was volume 1.
Okay.
So it took a box set.
Okay.
A box set, okay.
I'll give you that.
It feels like it's been longer.
I thought it was the last
Well, it has been longer for us.
Well, I suppose that's the way we've been doing it, yeah.
For us, it's been like, I don't know, probably a dozen
almost
box
a year.
sets.
You don't understand. She's been missing for a year. So, but I just, I don't know. I would like to believe that Leela and Romana are friendly to each other. And yet Romana will be the first person to send Leela into an impossible Suicide Squad type mission because, well, I can trust Leela to get out of it. And I think Leela's tired of being used in that way.
Well,
and so I think
100% agree with you.
Yeah, I think they've got a really interesting push-pull thing going on. And so I was kind of looking forward to that. And I feel like we got some of that in this, that every time they were together, they were kind of gritching each other.
That's
but then
just
when
it.
push came to shove,
That's just it. It was more of the same, though. That's what I had a problem with, is they reunite on poor terms, at least from Leela's perspective. And then it really feels like Romana is trying to get back in good graces, but at the same time, she's being very selfish about needing to get to the TARDIS so they can get off world. And so, and asking again of Leela to put aside what she's doing and help her. And she at least coaxes it into the fact that, well, then Leela can go get medicine from this gal. Unfortunately, this gal doesn't need medicine. And Leela knows, or Romana knows that. Because she's confided in her that she's too far gone. And so I don't know, it was more of the same. I think that was another problem I had with it, is I wanted them to either reconcile and realize how much, and maybe had it gone far enough to do that, maybe that's what it doesn't do. Maybe there's still this friction of a relationship, and then had something evolved from it at the end, other than Leela upset that Romana's going to go off and do her thing. There should have been more to it, and there wasn't. But I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No. I mean, you're probably right, because I feel like that's a result based on the story that I've listened to so far. That's the resolution I'm going to need. And from the sound of things, it's not the one I'm going to get. So my opinion on this could very well change by the time I get it finished.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it kind of feels like they not really reconcile, but at least agree to work together. And then Leela's really upset that they're going to leave Romana behind, which isn't consistent with what's happened previously in the story.
Right.
So it is fairly inconsistent as far as even their relationship goes. And the overall plot is pretty pointless.
Now, to be fair, Leela doesn't want Romana to sacrifice. She feels like she's sacrificing herself. And I don't think Leela thought she was doing that, or Romana thought she was doing that, but So to be fair, I could see why she was still very much, oh no, you can't do this, you can't go. But yeah, it's then it just seems very inconsistent, because we've had all of this build up and all of this time to reconcile this relationship, and then Daleks show up and ruin everything. As they always do.
As they always do.
As they always do. The other thing about it is, okay, we've been on the hunt for Leela. We've been searching for her this whole box set. We find her, and Leela even asks the questions, okay, now what?
Yeah.
And they didn't have an answer for it.
Nope.
Okay, you found me. Now what do you want? Well, we want you to join us. Do what? Well, we don't really know. if they had okay, we need to find Leela because we need to do this, and this, other than making sure she's okay, it was like, oh, I needed something more than that for this. We hinged the whole box set on finding Leela, and there isn't a reason to find Leela other than we're friends.
Yeah.
But see, I feel like that to me is exactly the reason.
But they didn't have a plan for what's next.
But, well, I don't feel like they probably explain it well enough. I want that emotional monologue of Romana going, whatever else you may think of me, I am your friend. We came running to find you. We want to save you. We want to help you. And, whatever Leela says to her at that point is immaterial. But I want that big confessional, if you will, from Romana that, yes, I'm a horrible person, but I do care about you. You know what I mean?
I think the problem is they didn't put Leela in a harrowing situation that she couldn't take care of for them to rescue her.
Right.
They ran to rescue her, but she didn't need rescuing.
Yep.
So that's a bigger fault of the story itself.
Mm-hmm. I don't
Never
know if I
mind the
agree
fact
with that
it didn't explain. Well, but if they're running to rescue her and she doesn't need rescue, and then therefore doesn't need to go with her, then why did they go get her?
Yeah, because they should have been satisfied with the fact that she's found a place, she's living a life that she likes, that she's comfortable in. And so ultimately when they know that she's okay and she wants them to then leave, then they should just then leave. Now, granted, I know they can't because the TARDIS has been hijacked, but
they were still trying to convince her to go with them for no reason.
And that's problematic.
Well, see, I feel like if she was in extreme danger, it's a much easier choice to make. We've come to save you. Okay, get me out of here because I'm going to die if I stay. Versus, well, this is still dangerous, but there's people here that I care about and the war hasn't shown up yet. And no, I don't want to leave, because that gives you that interpersonal drama. If you raise the stakes too much on Leela, then it is a rescue mission. But the fact that they show up and there's no rescue needed, I think is what kind of puts it back into that back and forth. But again, I haven't listened to the end, so I don't know how it resolves. I'll defer to your guys' opinion at this point and say, yeah, it sounds like it's probably not going to be a very promising ending.
Yeah, I thought it was problematic. I wanted the emotional weight of the end to have more of an impact on me, because it ultimately is, on the surface, seems like Romana's demise. But unfortunately, by the time we got to this resolution or to this conclusion, I was so upset with the way that the story had gone that I almost was like, oh, now you've thrown that at me. And I just was even more disgusted with it because of that. So.
Oh, maybe they'll turn the tables on the next one and Leela will come to rescue Romana.
Well, I certainly don't. I won't subscribe to the fact that I think Romana's dead.
Yeah, I don't necessarily believe that either.
No, I think it was a clever cliffhanger, I suppose, but.
The companions get cliffhangers. The Doctor, not so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think had she had a bigger reason to sacrifice herself, I would have cared more too. It was more of I've got to stay so that Rassilon doesn't find out about this fuel planet that the Daleks are using. Well, shouldn't Rassilon know so they could stop the Daleks from utilizing the fuel that's on this planet? I mean, it seems like.
Well, I don't think she wants either side to find this planet. Unfortunately, the Daleks have gotten there. So,
but obviously the Daleks already had. So why wouldn't she? Okay, I better go so I can notify the Time Lords of, hey, the Daleks are over here getting this fuel. You better stop them.
Yeah, that's true. Although on the other hand, I mean, they're outcasts. They've been
on the run from the Time Lords.
Yeah, I mean they pretty much are exiles. So.
But now they got something to come back with to go, hey.
I suppose, but I don't think Romana. I mean, I don't think Romana even wants an uneasy alliance with Rassilon at this point.
No,
I don't know.
I don't think she does either. Yeah. But it just didn't feel like.
I mean, I guess for the sake of Gallifrey, though, I suppose is what you mean. And so I guess you're right. I suppose for the sake of Gallifrey, it's something that she.
And knowing the Daleks are there already, it's not like she's hiding the planet from the Daleks.
Right? They already know. They're already there.
The Daleks are there.
Yeah,
they're getting the fuel. So stop them. And instead, she.
I have a feeling.
Herself instead.
Ultimately, in the next box set, Narvin and Leela are going to go back to the Time Lords and say, "We've got a problem."
I would hope so.
Yeah. All right. Well, it was a pretty good box set that fizzled at the end. For me, anyway.
You are invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson,
Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse on shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to Traveling the Vortex.
All right, well, Sean, what do we got coming up on the schedule?
6B. No. What are we doing? 60th anniversary tie-in. We return to the story In Between Stories with City of the Damned, part of the Doctor Who weekly comic run from back in the, when was that? The
late 70s, early 80s? Yeah, late 70s.
And then the new ongoing 14th Doctor?
Yep.
Story, Liberation of the Daleks. We'll be doing the first 4 parts of that. So a whole bunch of comics next time. Followed by, in theory, the opening volley of Big Finish's 60th anniversary tie-in, Once and Future Past Lives. And then we return to the Time War with Gallifrey Time War 4. And then 6B.
And then some more 6B.
Then some more 6B with the novel World Game, which you may wish to begin on if you are following along.
Yes. And of course, you can find all this information on our website, travelingthevortex.com. If you get any value out of this podcast, why not consider putting some value back into it? Please do that by considering clicking on our Patreon link and supporting us. When you become a patron of the podcast, you unlock more audios and specials from us. And also consider giving us a 5-star rating wherever you subscribe to this podcast. It helps bump us up in the ratings and recommendations. Anything else we need to touch on before we close this show? If not, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing ya. Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.